Have you ever wondered, if they truly cared, why did they disappear when I needed them the most? The harsh truth is people don't always lie with words. Sometimes, they lie with their absence. One of the hardest truths we'll ever have to accept is this. People who truly care about you are consistent. They may not be perfect, but they are predictable in their love, in their concern, and in their presence. But when someone doesn't actually care, the most glaring sign is their inconsistency. And no, I'm not talking about someone having a bad day or going through a tough season. I'm talking about the person who turns into a stranger when it matters most. One day they're kind, attentive, and thoughtful. The next day, it's like you don't even exist. That's not love. That's confusion wearing a mask. And let me tell you this, God is not the author of confusion. So if you constantly feel uncertain, anxious, or like you're walking on eggshells around someone, you need to pause and ask yourself, why am I holding on to someone who keeps letting go of me? Someone who truly cares doesn't keep you guessing. They don't leave you wondering where you stand. Love doesn't hide in the shadows, it stands boldly in the light. The enemy uses inconsistency to plant doubt in your heart, to make you question your own worth. One moment you feel seen, the next you feel invisible. That's not love, that's manipulation. And people who don't genuinely care will keep playing that game until your spirit is exhausted and your joy is gone. You deserve better than that. Consistency is the heartbeat of care. It's not about grand gestures. It's about simple, steady presence. You don't have to beg someone who cares to check in on you. They just do. You don't have to chase them to show up. They're already there. Not just when it's convenient, but even when it costs them something. And that's how you know it's real. But people who don't care, they're only consistent in being inconsistent. They disappear when you need them most, then reappear when it benefits them. That's not a relationship. That's a transaction. And relationships built on transactions will always collapse under the weight of real life. When pain hits, when grief strikes, when the bottom falls out, that's when you find out who's really in your corner. Some of you have been blaming yourselves for someone else's inconsistency, thinking, maybe if I were quieter, maybe if I didn't ask for so much, maybe if I looked different, talked different, acted different, they'd stay. No, my friend. You don't have to shapeshift just to hold on to someone who is meant to walk with you. You don't have to shrink yourself in order to be loved. Real love makes space. Real care shows up. Let's be honest. Some people don't want a true connection. They just want the comfort you bring. They're not investing. They're extracting. And when someone is only consistent when it's convenient for them, that's not consistence. That's calculation. That's not care, that's control. God created you with value, with purpose, with dignity. And when someone treats you like an option, you better believe God sees them as temporary. Don't keep chasing people who keep changing the rules. If they were truly sent by God, you wouldn't constantly feel confused. You wouldn't feel small, overlooked, or replaceable. You'd feel covered. You'd feel known. You'd feel safe. Now, let me speak to the one who keeps hoping they'll go back to how they were in the beginning. Let me tell you something. The version you fell for was often just a mask. You can't keep holding on to the memory of how they treated you for 2 weeks, while ignoring how they've treated you for 2 years. That kind of inconsistency isn't something to fix. It's something to flee. And don't confuse inconsistency with mystery. Some people will call their emotional absence being complicated. But there's nothing mysterious about someone who chooses to be emotionally unavailable. They're not complicated. They're careless with you, your time, and your heart. And if someone is playing tug-of-war with your peace, it's time to let go of the rope. Every time you accept their inconsistency, you're teaching them how to treat you. You're telling them, I'll be available even when you're not. That your heart is on layaway, waiting for them to decide if they want it. That's not love. That's torment. And hear me, you are not hard to love. You are not asking for too much. You are not too emotional, too deep, or too complicated. You just keep giving your heart to people. who do not have the capacity to carry it. And maybe, just maybe, the greatest act of healing you can do today is this. Stop explaining yourself to people who are committed to misunderstanding you. Because when someone's love is real, their presence will be consistent. Their words will match their actions. And their care won't change with the weather. True care doesn't disappear when it's inconvenient. It doesn't pause when life gets messy. Real care doesn't fade when you're no longer useful. There's a quiet kind of pain. One that doesn't come from arguments or abandonment. It comes from feeling like a burden. When you open your mouth to speak, and their eyes roll, their body shifts. Their energy suddenly changes. That silent rejection cuts deep. And hear me, when someone doesn't truly care about you, they'll make you feel like your presence is too much. Your needs are too heavy. Your voice is too loud. They won't say it outright, but they'll show it through their sighs, their silence, and their sudden distance. That right there is one of the clearest signs that love has left the room. You were not created to beg for belonging. You were not formed by God to walk on eggshells. Real love doesn't treat you like an obligation. And true care will never see your heart as a hassle. When someone genuinely values you, your pain matters to them. Your voice matters. Your joy and your sorrow, they're not an inconvenience. They're part of the privilege of knowing you. But people who don't care, they avoid your emotions like they're a disease. The moment you bring up something real, your disappointment, your fears, your desire for deeper connection, they shut down. They grow cold. They tell you you're too sensitive, too dramatic, always starting something. That is not your fault. That's not your weakness. That's their refusal to meet you at the depth your soul deserves. It's subtle, isn't it? The way they make you second-guess yourself, wondering, am I asking for too much? You're not. You're asking for basic respect, for understanding, for presence. But somewhere along the way, the world convinced you that needing those things makes you needy. But God says, cast your cares on me. Why? Because He cares for you. That's the standard. Care looks like caring, not criticizing. Love leans in, it doesn't pull away. I know some of you have poured out your hearts to people who just stared blankly at you. People who nodded but didn't listen. People who waited for their turn to speak, instead of hearing your cry. And that's silent neglect. It's loud in your spirit, isn't it? You leave the conversation, feeling more alone than when it started. That's not care. That's presence without purpose. That's proximity without compassion. When someone truly cares, they feel your weight without you having to scream. They see your tears before they fall. They lean in when your voice starts to tremble. You don't have to perform. You don't have to impress. You don't have to shrink. You just have to be. And they'll hold that space for you with grace. That's what love does. That's what care looks like. It doesn't flinch at the sight of your wounds. It binds them. It doesn't disappear when you're down. It stays, even in the silence, especially in the silence. And let me say this, to the one who's been carrying the friendship, the relationship, the family dynamic entirely on your own. You've been the one making the calls, checking in, making plans, apologizing. But when you finally need someone to lean on, no one is there. That's not a relationship. That's an imbalance. A one-way street, leading straight to emotional exhaustion. God never intended for you to live in emotional starvation, surviving off crumbs of attention and fragments of affection. If someone keeps you guessing, whether your needs are welcome, they've already given you the answer. You are not hard to love. You're just loving people who aren't committed to loving you back. Some of you are waiting for someone to apologize, for making you feel small, waiting for them to notice your effort, waiting for them to finally show up with the same energy you've been giving all along. But hear me, you don't need closure from someone who never offered you care. You don't need permission to stop carrying someone who refused to carry you. This isn't pride, it's protection. Think about how Jesus responded. To the people who came to him in need, He never once made them feel like a burden. The woman at the well, the blind man crying out, the woman with the issue of blood. He met them in their brokenness, with compassion, not condemnation. And if you are following the Spirit of God, you should feel that same compassion from the people closest to you. If you don't, something's wrong. Sometimes, the people who treat you like a burden are simply mirroring how they see themselves. But that is not your weight to carry. Your worth is not determined by someone else's inability to recognize it. Your voice deserves to be heard. Your soul deserves rest. Your needs are not negotiable. So if someone has made you feel like a burden in their life, it's time to stop and ask yourself, why am I still handing my heart to someone who doesn't handle it with care? There's something deeply revealing about who shows up when life gets quiet. You see, people who don't truly care about you won't come around to build with you. They'll only show up when they need something from you. They don't seek you to connect. They seek you to collect. And that's not friendship. That's not love. That's not a relationship. That's using someone. And God did not call you to be used by people who only know how to take and never learn how to give. You've probably seen it before. Months of silence. No calls. No check-ins. Not a word. Then suddenly, a text. A call. But it's not to ask how you're doing. It's not to check on your heart. Or see if you need prayer. Or just a friend. It's to ask for a favor. A connection. An opportunity. And you feel it, don't you? That quiet disappointment. The hollow ache in your chest. Because deep down, you still hope. Maybe this time it's different. Maybe this time, they came back because they care. But they didn't. The truth is, people who don't care about you only knock when their world falls apart, not when yours does. They're not checking in to carry your burdens. They're showing up to lighten their own. They've turned your heart into a resource, a rest stop, a convenience store. They visit when their soul runs on empty. And every time they do, you refill them while they leave you drained. That's not love. That's dependency disguised as relationship. And it will wear you down. It will make you question your value because they're always reaching for your hand. When they're falling, but where are they? When it's your turn to weep, where are they? When your heart is tired and you need someone to stand in the gap for you, Jesus said, "Do unto others as you would have them do unto you." That doesn't just apply to kindness. It applies to balance, to reciprocity, to the kind of care that flows both ways. You're not meant to constantly pour into someone who never pours anything back. That's not mercy. That's misalignment. And I know it's hard to accept when someone you love sees you only as useful. You remember the good times. You hold on to the laughter, the memories, the potential. But love, based on memory, can easily become a trap. Because what you remember isn't always what they're still offering. Some people stop choosing you long before they stopped calling you. Their presence remains, but their intention left a long time ago. You have to open your eyes to patterns. If they only come around when they're low, but disappear when you're empty, take that as truth. Don't keep justifying selfishness because you're afraid of being alone. There's a kind of loneliness that comes from staying connected to people who never truly show up for you. And it's worse than being by yourself, because at least in solitude, you know exactly where you stand. With them, you're always hoping, always waiting, always second-guessing. And some of you, you've been so generous for so long that you've forgotten what it feels like to receive. You've been giving and giving, your heart, your time, your energy, hoping that one day they'd notice, hoping they'd finally match your effort. But they never do. And it's not because you didn't give enough. It's because they never intended to give anything at all. The enemy loves relationships like that, where one person is exhausted and the other feels entitled. One gives, The other takes, it breeds distraction. It creates discouragement. And worst of all, it keeps you from doing what God has called you to do, because your strength is constantly being spent on people who were never meant to walk with you. Listen to me. You are not a backup plan. You are not someone's escape route. You are not their fixer, their filler, their fallback. You are a child of God, created in His image, filled with purpose and promise. And anyone who doesn't treat you with that same honor was never meant to stay. Maybe they were meant to pass through. Maybe they were a lesson, but they are not your assignment. God doesn't send people into your life to drain you. He sends people who sharpen you, lift you up, challenge you with love, and walk with you in truth. So if someone only calls when they need help, but never shows up when you need hope, that is not your person. That is not your tribe. You don't have to be rude. You don't have to be bitter. But you do have to be wise. And sometimes, wisdom looks like closing the door on people who only knock with empty hands. One of the hardest things to accept in life is this: silence speaks. And sometimes, it screams. You reach out with kindness, with sincerity, with a heart full of hope, but all you get in return is nothing. No response, no reply. Just a void. Then the questions begin. Did I say something wrong? Did I expect too much? Am I not worthy of a reply? But let me tell you something. Silence is an answer, and when someone truly cares about you, they don't leave you wondering. There is a quiet cruelty in being ignored. It's not always loud, but it cuts deep, because it's not just about what wasn't said. It's about the message behind the silence. When someone ignores your texts, your calls, your efforts to connect, they're saying something without saying anything. They're saying, "You're not important enough to respond to." And that kind of dismissal, that is not love. That is not care. That is not the fruit of a heart that values another. God is not the author of confusion. He does not teach us to play games with hearts. He does not teach us to withhold affection or punish people with silence. He teaches us to love with clarity, to speak truth in love, to answer when called. So when someone habitually ignores you, not just once, not just in hard seasons, but consistently and without regard for your heart, they are telling you exactly how they feel, and you have to be willing to hear it, even if they never say it with words. I know it hurts, because you remember when things were different. You remember the laughter, the closeness, the warmth of a bond that once felt unbreakable. You remember when they replied quickly? When they made time for you? When you felt like you mattered? And now, you're staring at a screen, waiting for a reply that never comes. You sit there with your phone in hand, trying to make sense of a silence that was never supposed to be part of the story. But my friend, let me remind you of something eternal. Your value does not decrease just because someone refuses to acknowledge it. God doesn't take days to respond to you. He doesn't leave your prayers on read. He listens. He responds. He cares. That is the model. That is the standard. And when someone consistently withholds even the basic level of respect, that is not your signal to chase them. That is your signal to choose yourself. Some people confuse distance with dignity. They think that by ignoring you, they're holding power over you. But the truth is, there is no power in indifference. Only proof that the connection has grown cold. And when love grows cold, it's no longer safe to warm yourself at its fire. You have to walk away before you're burned by the absence of what once was. You deserve someone who never makes you question whether your message was seen, whether your call was heard, whether your presence is wanted. You deserve someone who picks up not because they have to, but because they want to. Someone who honors your voice, respects your time, and values your heart enough to respond. Not just when it's convenient, not just when they feel like it, but consistently, because they care. And hear me when I say this. Your heart is not a burden. Your effort is not too much. If someone makes you feel that way, it's not your fault. It's their unwillingness to engage with the weight of real relationship. Some people don't ignore you because they're busy. They ignore you because you are no longer useful to them. That's the truth. And as hard as it is, you have to receive it and release it. Don't keep sending messages into a space where your words are treated like noise. Don't keep calling people who send you to voicemail in both spirit and truth. If someone sees your name pop up and feels nothing, that tells you everything. If they can scroll past your message without even thinking to respond, that tells you something too. Don't explain it away. Don't justify their silence. Don't keep waiting at doors God has already closed. You see, when God wants to protect you, He doesn't always remove the person. Sometimes, He simply lets them reveal who they really are. And silence. Silence is one of the clearest revelations. It strips away the performance. It exposes priorities. It shows you who's truly in your corner and who's just keeping you around for convenience. There is a peace that comes when you let go of one-sided communication, when you release the weight of waiting on people who never planned to answer. And then you realize, being ignored doesn't make you small. It just frees you to walk toward the place where you are truly seen. There's something you start to notice when people stop caring. At first, it's subtle. It doesn't always arrive with harsh words or dramatic actions. It creeps in through a change in tone, a lack of excitement, an absence of tenderness. One of the clearest signs that someone no longer cares for you is when your pain doesn't move them anymore. When your tears fall and their heart doesn't break. When you speak of your struggle and they meet it with silence, with indifference, or worse, dismissal. A person who cares will lean in when you hurt. They will ask. They will listen. They will reach for your hand, not just with gestures, but with genuine compassion. But when someone doesn't care, your pain becomes an inconvenience. It becomes background noise in a world that revolves around their own comfort. And let's be honest, that kind of hurt cuts deeper than any argument ever could. Because nothing stings more than being vulnerable with someone who makes your suffering feel insignificant. When Jesus walked this earth, He stopped for the broken. He didn't rush past the blind man. He didn't ignore the woman with the issue of blood. He didn't silence the cries of Bartimaeus. He paused. He listened. He responded. That's what love does. Love leans into pain. It doesn't turn away from it. So if someone consistently avoids your pain, if they dismiss your anxiety, ignore your sadness, minimize your trauma, you're looking into the eyes of someone whose heart is no longer aligned with yours. It's easy to be around people when they're happy. It's easy to sit at the table when the music is playing and the room is full of laughter. But relationships are proven in the fire, not at the feast. The ones who truly care, they'll show up when the lights go out. When your voice shakes, when your eyes are tired, when you're not the strongest version of yourself, they'll still be there. They may not come with all the answers. They may not have a perfect solution, but they come with presence, with compassion, with empathy. And yet, there are people who once claimed to love you, who grow cold when you're at your lowest. They say things like, "You're being dramatic," or "You just need to get over it." They offer silence instead of support, judgment instead of grace. And that's when you realize you were never truly safe with them. Because anyone who truly loves you will never feel comfortable watching you suffer in silence. Sometimes the people you held up the most are the ones who step over you when you fall. You gave them strength. You poured into them when they were empty. You were a shoulder, a listener, a light in their darkness. But now that your light has dimmed, they disappear. That's not loyalty. That's convenience. That's not love. That's self-interest. But hear me. Don't let their lack of care change who you are. Don't let their coldness freeze your heart. Because your compassion is a gift. Your sensitivity is not a weakness. The fact that you feel deeply, that you notice others' pain, that you desire to support and heal. That's Christ in you. Don't bury it, just because someone failed to honor it. People who don't care about your pain are revealing more about themselves than about you. Their lack of response is not a reflection of your worth. It's a reflection of their inability to love meaningfully. Some people are emotionally unavailable. Some are self-absorbed. Some are hardened by their own wounds. And though you may have hoped they would be different, you have to accept them for who they've shown themselves to be. Stop explaining your feelings to people who are committed to misunderstanding you. Stop reopening your wounds for people who never intended to help you heal. There's nothing holy about keeping broken company, just because you're afraid to walk away. If someone can witness your pain and remain unmoved, they were never assigned to your healing. And you cannot force someone to care, no matter how loyal you've been, no matter how much history you share, no matter how much you've given. Sometimes, the most loving thing you can do is release the ones who won't make room for your pain. Because God will surround you with people who don't just tolerate your wounds, they help bind them. People who won't run when you're weak. People who reflect His heart when yours is breaking. You deserve to be seen. You deserve to be comforted. You deserve to be in spaces where your sorrow is not an inconvenience, but a reason to draw closer. That's what real love looks like. That's what genuine care sounds like. And if someone has to be begged to offer that, then you already have your answer. One of the clearest signs that someone doesn't truly care about you is when they only show up when they need something. They disappear when you're down. They stay quiet when you're hurting. They go silent when there's nothing in it for them. But the moment they need a favor, the moment they're in trouble, the moment life stops going their way, suddenly their name pops up on your screen. Suddenly, you hear that voice again. They remember your number. They remember your kindness. But not because they cherish you, because they need something from you. That kind of presence isn't rooted in love. It's rooted in convenience. And it hurts, doesn't it? To realize someone isn't checking in to see how you are. They're checking to see what you can do. They don't ask about your heart. They ask about your help. They don't reach for your friendship. They reach for your favor. And when the need is gone, so are they. Let me say this clearly. People who only remember you when they need you never truly valued you in the first place. They valued your service. They valued your strength. They valued what you could provide, but not you, not your soul, not your worth, not your presence. You can always tell the difference between someone who's with you and someone who's using you by watching what they do when you have nothing to give. Do they still call? Do they still show up? Do they still listen when the conversation isn't about fixing their problems? If not, then their connection was never about you. It was about what you could do. But God doesn't build relationships like that. When the prodigal son returned home, empty-handed, it wasn't a transaction. It was love. It wasn't about what the son could offer. It wasn't about what he could give. It was about who he was. His father embraced him, not for his usefulness, but for his identity. That's how real love works. That's how genuine care looks. Today, too many people treat others like vending machines. Press a few buttons, get what you want, walk away. And the moment the machine runs empty, they kick it. They complain. They leave. But you, child of God, are not a vending machine. You are not here to constantly pour out and be emptied by people who never intend to pour anything back into you. You are not called to be everyone's emergency plan while they ignore your everyday pain. It's not selfish to recognize these patterns. It's not prideful to set boundaries with people who only show up when they're desperate. Even Jesus himself withdrew from the crowds to be alone with the Father. He didn't let everyone pull on him endlessly. He moved with purpose. He poured out with wisdom. And if Jesus set boundaries, so should you. Don't be fooled by sudden attention. When someone disappears during your struggles, but becomes warm and friendly when they need a ride, a favor, money, or emotional rescue. That's not love knocking. That's manipulation. It's a cycle. And if you're not careful, you'll keep opening the door every time they return, thinking it's relationship, when really, it's just convenience dressed up in false affection. Now, I know this is hard to hear, especially if that person is someone close to you. Maybe it's family. Maybe it's someone you've loved deeply. Someone you believed in. Someone you helped again and again. And I know how difficult it is to accept that someone you would have gone to war for won't even lift a finger when you're bleeding. But hear this, the truth will set you free, even when it stings. You were not created to be drained. You were not designed to be used. God made you with purpose, with value, with dignity. Your time matters. Your energy matters. Your heart matters. So when someone shows you that they only come around when they need something, believe them the first time. Don't keep giving your best to someone who only shows up in their worst. Real love is consistent. It's present in the silence, not just the storm. It checks on you with no hidden agenda. It gives without keeping score. It stays when there's nothing to gain. That kind of love exists, but you won't find it in people who only remember your name when they're in crisis. Be kind, yes. Be generous, absolutely. But be wise. Love with discernment. Serve without slavery. Give without allowing yourself to be taken for granted. Because when someone truly cares for you, they don't wait until they need you. They walk with you. They talk with you. They make space for you. Even when they don't need a thing. Don't confuse demand with devotion.